You're listening to the Live Free podcast. I'm your host, Christine, certified life coach, pain to power mentor, and creator of Embody You Mindset Mastery School. I'm here today to discuss living life after disease, disaster, or adversity, to discuss living life fully once again. A life of hope, peace, and resiliency. A life fully embodied. I utilize the lessons that I learned going through not one, but two primary cancers. I'm here today to guide you to the life of your dreams, turn your pain into power, and lead you back to yourself. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another transformational story. Today we've got Tanys, and oh my God, you're going to want to hear this. Tanys has gone through such a whirlwind of a couple of years, and the moves and shakes and changes that she has overcome and the adversity that she has overcome to become this unbelievable, intuitive, wonderful, shifted person is worth the listen. So thank you so much, Tanys, for everything, and I look so forward to playing this video for you guys. Enjoy. Okay, so welcome. So today we've got Tanys here, and Tanys is going to tell us a little bit about her story, her transformation, and a little bit about some of the advice that she would offer somebody in a similar situation. Tanys is a good friend of mine, so I'm looking so forward to this interview because a lot of this information I already know and some of it's new. So thank you so much for coming, Tanys. And let's get going. What's your story?
Perfect. Yeah. Well, as you know, I'm currently not working right now, and that is a huge part of my story. And so, let's just get into it. So, over the past year with COVID and being a new mother, I kind of discovered I am intuitive, and so that, journey of the spiritual and the kind of the energetic work has been very much a new thing for me in the past year, but definitely past 6 months. And so the story today, kind of going to start off with where I am today and kind of go back and how that kind of, filtered into where I am at now. And so the biggest leap I took was really following my intuition in May when I returned to work. And I actually quit my job 3 days after returning from mat leave. So that is how big the push was for me to really follow my intuition and really choose differently. I realized specifically with my career, I've had a pattern. It's, I've been in the same kind of marketing admin role for like 9 years now. And so, within those 9 years, I've had about 4 different jobs within the 9 years. And every kind of the reason why I left each job was because of not being valued, not being heard, not being understood, right? Kind of being like the underdog. And so when I kind of came back off mat leave, it was the same story, and I really had that push to choose differently. And I am so happy I did. I'm really following what I'm called to do. So let's just kind of stop there and kind of go as to how this came to be. So right now we have a daughter. She's about 14 months. And so I was pregnant and did have my mat leave during COVID. So that was like starting of May 2020. And I had a lot of grief going into motherhood because, right off the bat, there was no social community. I was really focused on my health at the time. I was already doing some holistic practices. And so I did acupuncture and I was doing womb work. And so when, COVID hit, it was just, no appointments were being made. And I just didn't have like the experience I wanted to have. And so that kind of fell into postpartum rage, which is a bit different than postpartum depression. But I just realized I was, you know, really just so irritable all of the time. And I know that's generally, you know, the case with your hormones being fluctuated, but it was just a lot to take in. And so, you know, it came to the time where it was like November, December, so about 6 months, halfway through my mat leave. And I was like, no, I really can't do this myself. Like, I need to go back to counseling, because in my life, I've always turned to counseling, whether it would be for relationship advice or careers. And I think that's wonderful. I think everybody should just have, like, everyone should go to therapy or counseling. It's just wonderful. And so,
agreed.
Yeah. And so, as you know, Sarah Sand from Shift Into It, I found her about 5 years ago, and I kind of, you know, off and on, when, you know, I go see her whenever I need to. And so at this point in my life, it was November 2020, and booked an appointment. And so we booked an appointment, and we basically kind of worked through some grief, worked through, like, you know, what isn't working, what was working, why I felt the need I couldn't pursue my creative passions, because, you know, with mat leave, I had some time to kind of journal and paint, and just never happened. And so we talked through that. And one of the last questions that I was wondering about, because as people know, I guess I never really explained, but Shift Into It is a holistic approach to counseling. So they are intuitive people as well, and they really bring in spirit to kind of guide you through transition or whatever you need. And so for me, being a new mother was a transition. And also my daughter Zoe really had qualities of my grandpa, who passed away about a year and a half ago from today. And I just really, as soon as she was born, I really felt his presence. You know, obviously you can't really, like, understand what that, like, your logical mind can't really say, oh, this is it. Like, you just feel it, right? And so at the end of the session, I asked the counselor, and I said, you know, I feel like my grandpa's here. Like, is he, like, how does he relate to Zoe? And she said, well, you're already asking a question that you know the answer to, because you know, I was already intuitive then, but I didn't really realize it. And so it was kind of that gateway, like, right? And so bringing another soul into the world is a big deal. Like, it's not just, oh, giving birth, and, you know, it's really is sacred. And that was kind of, that was like the gateway for me to access the spiritual realm, was having a child. And so
excellent.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so after the appointment, that was when I first had my first spiritual encounter with my grandpa. He came through to me. I didn't see anything. It was hearing, so I could hear his voice, and very surreal. And he had a lot of messages for people. And so I wrote them down, you know, delivered them to people within the next couple of weeks. And then it was beginning of January, where I was like, oh my goodness, I was having experiences. What's going on with me? You know, all
that would have been scary.
It was scary, yeah. And I didn't tell my husband for quite some time. Like, I think he knew about my grandpa, but there's a couple other stuff that, as you go through this process, you feel things differently. You start to, like, see things and hear things, and and so my grandpa came through to me again, and he delivered a couple other messages. And so I guess my kind of point with my grandpa coming in and into my life is basically, he was kind of like the first person to really step up in the family and allow my family to heal and myself to heal with things going on in our life. And so that's kind of the journey. And so, you know, that was January. So fast forward to now, it's been a lot of work. And I've been gravitating toward different podcasts, and I've been doing, you know, Reiki work. I don't do Reiki work. I've been going to people who do Reiki work. And I've been, you know, really toying with my purpose in life. Like, what is my purpose? You know what I mean? And it's, you know, again, speaking from my career past, I've never had a sense of purpose. I've never felt fulfilled. And so, you know, leading up to going back to mat leave, the spirit world was really kind of pushing for me to open up and to just be like, okay, like, this is who I am, kind of thing. And so what happened was, I did some past life regression work, and I was rereading my old journals, because a big part of who I am is I journal. I've journaled since I was, like, you know, 12. And as I've been rereading my journals, I've been discovering that I was so intuitive back then. And I feel like the people who, my classmates and people who were around me at the time, they're going to be like, oh, that was so you. Like I was writing, I journaled, I, was into like, Harry Potter and stuff, and not really knowing why. I just really enjoyed it.
Right.
And so going back to my journals, I was 15 when I wrote this sentence, and I was reading back, and it said, sometimes I feel like I'm put on this earth to make people understand and to feel, but it's a heavy burden feeling these feelings. That's what I wrote when I was 15, because I didn't know that I was just such an old soul, and I felt things differently. Like I just took it on. And so moving forward to what I think is the best example of how should I word this, is just the best example of how this kind of showcased for me and how I took feelings on, and how I really am like a true kind of how should I put this? Not really the right word, but basically it's like, when you're in flow as compared to when you're not in flow. So I'm going to just use an example. So I was 18 when I met my ex-partner, and that relationship lasted about 4.5 years. And so in that 4.5 years, we really battled some demons. He had severe depression. And so that was basically an example of where, things went great for the first year or so. And then there were signs, right? And then you're like, no, not going to listen to them. We're just going to, we're going to control the situation, and we're going to keep on trucking on. And looking again, because I journaled, extensively of our relationship, and looking back to that little, 18-year-old, 20-year-old girl, it was just so much suffering and pain and anger and resentment. But at the end of the day, like those were my life lessons. And so I really am grateful for that relationship to, as painful as it was, I've really learned, maybe not at the time, because, you're kind of going through it. All you're really doing is survival. And so what I really kind of want to touch on is when a person is in survival mode, they don't have the capacity to look at the person and say, I'm sorry for this. This is what I've done. It's just like a cycle, right? You lash out, you do this, and for the better part of the partner I was with, he really couldn't love himself. And so we couldn't really love each other. And that was a huge part of moving through the relationship. And, it's been like almost 10 years now, when I kind of discovered my self-love. And so when I was going through my self-love journey, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is how he must have felt. This is how he, and so it was really like parallel to where we were together. It was such a roller coaster. And I really want to touch upon that, because if anybody who's in like a relationship and they're really trying so hard, they're just fighting the signs, they're fighting this, thinking you're going to change the person. And it's really not changing the person. It's really following who you are. And if that means ending the relationship, then that has to be it. And so it did take about 3.5 years to us finally, waking up and saying this isn't going to work for us. And, up until then, it was a huge struggle. It was struggle after struggle. Nothing was coming through. I had financial stress. I was in university at the time, just a whole lot of stress. And so for him, that manifested as depression. For me, it actually manifested as endometriosis. And so I'll get that in a bit. I'll get into that in a little bit. And so let me just try my thought. And so basically, so moving from that relationship into, it's been 10 years. We were together for 4.5 years. And then that's kind of when we kind of ended the relationship. That's when my now husband kind of came into the picture. So really working through your traumas and your relationship issues and that kind of stuff, it's almost like I was living a double life. I was, trying to heal from the past relationship, but also, trying to be the new girlfriend, right? Trying to be like this like happy, free-spirited person. And I really wasn't. Like I just, and so it took about 2.5 years into that relationship with my now husband to really unpack all of that stuff and really learn to heal from it. And so all of that kind of, came to a halt 2016 when I was diagnosed with endometriosis. And so what that is, for anybody that doesn't know what it is, it's just excess tissue or abnormal tissue that's grown in your uterus, outside it, kind of everywhere, really depending where your reproductive organs sit. And so the thing is there is no causation to that. There's no rhyme or reason as to how it develops, but there is lots of things you can do. There's like procedures. And so I did have a surgery, which was not successful. And so what that kind of led me to a more holistic approach. Like I was going to doctors and I was having, and so like my symptoms of endo was basically, it's almost like kind of like Crohn's disease kind of thing. It's very much digestive issues, fertility issues, that kind of stuff. So actually that led me to find out Carly Ray in Saskatchewan, and she does holistic womb work. And so once we started working on the womb work, ironically, what kind of came up was all of the feelings, the emotions of my past relationship and my past lives. Because as women, what I want to share and the point I want to touch on is, for women, we hold our grief, our shame, resentment, all of that in our womb space. And so from my past relationship and even some stuff from childhood and past lives, that stuff it just sat there. And so when you do all this work, you like shit comes up, you're on the table, someone's working on you and you're just crying and you have no idea why. And you find out this is why. So, that led me to find out this Carly Ray lady. And in the meantime, I was going to acupuncture, which is like traditional Chinese medicine. And they really work on, so if you have like an ache or pain in your body, it's basically related to an emotional issue. And I know some people are kind of think that's like, too woo-woo, but it really is. And I'm a living experience of it, because as I kind of moved through this work, that was 4 years ago into today, I actually am healed from my endo. I have yes, I'm totally healed. But it's a lot of shit to go through. I had a lot of work to do with releasing all that stuff up. So, to kind of do a recap, I've done, body talk, acupuncture, womb work, and that's just a lot of stuff. And what I really want to say and touch upon in regards to past lives is, anybody who's has some sort of disorder or some sort of symptom of that manifests in the body, it's merely, in my experience anyways, I mean, this could be different for everybody, but especially in mine, lots of that stuff comes from past lives. So you bring that into your life. And, like a really good example is my past relationship. I found out quite later on into the relationship that, he had like depressive thoughts when he was 7 years old. Like that stuff doesn't come from this lifetime. That doesn't come from, when you're 7, what does that mean? Right. And so when I really got into it, I was like, wow, like he must be carrying burdens from past lives, from stuff that's not tangible, right? Like you can't see it. So it's crazy to know that could be the case.
Absolutely. So was this your first foray into spiritual work then? Was all to do with your endo, which kind of created the need for this more spiritual work? Am I right there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. And so, it's almost like in hindsight where you look at for me, it was my past relationship before this one, how that manifested into going against what the universe was trying to tell us. And it was just push, pull, suffering, compared to, which manifested into, me not being able to express my emotions, which turned into endo. And, now it led me to really reflect on that and have compassion. So that's another piece I want to touch on, is really having compassion for the people that perhaps were maybe misunderstood. You didn't communicate it right. When you're trying so hard to survive, being in survival mode, you're not going to act your true self. You are going to act, emotionally react. And so in those situations, I'm now, through my healing, I'm now able to look at that relationship and others as well and say, you know what, it's okay. Like, you are okay, I'm okay. We were just trying to survive. We were just two people trying to, make it in the world. And I feel like that is like the perfect example of really having true compassion, is to look at someone else and say, you know what, it's okay. So, awesome. Yeah. So all of that kind of led to this year, and really kind of finding out I am intuitive, and the spirit world is really such a great place to be in, to really work with, and to know I have a greater purpose in life. And so what my purpose is, and I've been finding this out through going to different practitioners, is my purpose is to share and to teach. And so that's also why me quitting my corporate life, I'm actually working toward obtaining my spiritual life coach certification. So with that, I believe that's just a start. I'm 30 now. I have like how many really great years ahead of me, but I really just want to like serve and help people in a different way. I really am so grateful to be able to communicate with the other side and just really make a difference in people's lives. And just, with me kind of sharing my story, it's been quite some time. It's been about 2 months since I've been not working. But although it's a full-time job working on yourself. And so it is like a typical day is, I took my daughter to daycare. Because we decided to keep her in daycare because she thrives in that environment. And so really just, take her to daycare. I come home, read, write, educate myself, work on my course. I exercise, like I just really, and in between all of those, like stuff comes up. And so all of a sudden you can be watching TV and you're just like bawling your face off, right? Yeah. You are triggered by something and you don't know what it is, but you know you need to feel it. And so another lesson that I've learned, really in true healing, is to not spiritual bypass. And so what that means is everyone thinks when you heal and you're like, oh, just think positive thoughts and you'll be happy and you'll like, yeah. No. Like the hard part about this journey is feeling the feelings. And, with how you emotionally reacted in the past, is to look at your inner child and to look at your past self and say, you know what, this is just life. It's okay that I acted this way, and to really feel through the emotions. And then that transmutes to healing. And so you let go of that, you let go of whatever you're holding on to, and you can go on with your life and you can move on with your life. And so, again, for me, a big piece throughout all my journeys was self-love. And so my worth, and that kind of plays into my career. So I'll kind of go back to my career for a second. And so again, all throughout my career was not heard, not seen. And 2 days before I returned to work, my boss emailed me with a new salary adjustment. And that was an opportunity. That was my first time ever in my career where I was like, no, I'm not going to stand for this. I'm worth way more than the number. However, we all know that your job and your salary is not, does not equal your self-worth, right? They don't correlate. I approached my boss. I said, you know what, Kelly, I really can't accept this. Like, I really need you to work something out. I feel like I'm not being valued, blah, blah, blah. And that was my first kind of taste of really standing in my truth. So that was 2 days before my job, or before I went back. And the day I went back, I had a full body experience after my boss told me she couldn't do anything about it. And she's like, well, Tanys, like, we can maybe start a plan to see where you're going to go in the company. And I said, I've been there for 4 years. And I said, I'm still here and I've proved myself. I said, why would I have to like prove myself, right? And so really what happened that evening was I had a full body experience, and I, was first time in a long time I had a panic attack. And I said, to my husband, I said, this isn't right. I said, if this was the right decision, I wouldn't feel like this. And so that's another sign of really, like, that's how spirit communicates with you, is you have those moments where you are in like the breakdown and you are fighting so hard. And typically the right decision is right in front of you, but you have to move past the discomfort portion. And so that was when I realized, no, I need to choose differently. And I walked away from the corporate life. And it wasn't just the corporate life, it was my old life. Like my whole, 2 months ago seems forever to me. It's just such a lifetime ago. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a story.
It's so crazy. Yeah. And I don't know, I guess there's a couple other points just to kind of wrap that up is basically a big portion that's really helped me to kind of ground me and to kind of really pulling this together is human design. So human design is like a practice. Well, I wouldn't say it's a practice. It's more like a ideology, I guess. And so human design is based on a person's energy and how they're meant to work. So for me, I'm actually a projector, and this means the world in how I'm supposed to operate. Not really supposed to, but how my energy naturally operates. And so as a projector, projectors are like the seers of the world. So they see things differently, they feel things differently. And this was very certain in my childhood, where I would like get in trouble or something, that I would really feel it, but that came, that was basically throughout my childhood. And then again, into friendships and relationships, like I just knew I took things differently, and I was a sensitive person. And so the first person who actually confirmed I was a sensitive being was Sarah Sand. And so that's a big portion I'm actually forgetting of the story is Shift Into It has really radically changed my life. If I didn't have those ladies, I don't know where I would be. Like, they are such, important people in the world. And,
I agree.
Since kind of sharing my story a bit with people, a lot of people are kind of coming out and saying, oh my gosh, like, I'm a sensitive person too. Like, what does this mean? And I want to say to them, like, sensitive people are needed in today's world. And so as a projector, again, I take on other people's feelings, but I also need to transmute that into healing for them. And also, it's really waiting for invitations. And so what that means is people don't recognize your worth until you do, or until projectors do. And so that's a huge pattern of how in my career, I wasn't being recognized because I didn't feel like I deserved to be recognized. And so once I kind of finally, ex-nayed on the, I'm not going to take no shit from my previous jobs, that's when opportunities, just in the last 2 months, started coming to me. And I'm, just really in flow. And I know it's kind of a lot of information with the human design piece, but I really feel like if people kind of, are open to grasping the concept of human design and what that means for their energy type, because some people are built to, work longer than 9 to 5, and they're not going to burn out. Whereas for me, I struggled. Like, if I, put even extra, like a couple hours a day, like it was just too much, and that's okay. So for a day like me, a typical day is, me not running around trying to keep up with those individuals who are now working 9 to 5s. And I really feel like I don't want to be that person, and it's,
fair.
It's a really crazy journey. And it's a lot of information, but
Yeah. And we can choose, can't we? Something that none of us really realize, especially with kind of the structure that we're in today's society, is that your life can be a reflection of what you choose, but it's not accepted for you to say, like, I don't want to be a 9 to 5. I want to be, I want to be this teacher. I want to help people grow and all of those sorts of things. And I'm going to do it my way, and for a lot of people, especially like you're kind of like, pull at your bootstrap kind of people, they're going to be like, okay, but how are you going to make money at that? But what it really comes down to is that where you're going to create that value is in that energy exchange, the exchange of your true essence, your true energy. You keep going with that, and eventually there'll be an exchange, and that is just my belief. Yeah. Anyway, so I digress, but
I know. And I guess a big part of what I'm kind of leaving out is, my first kind of question to my spiritual team was like, because we're talking about purpose in life and like, what's the purpose of, suffering and that kind of stuff. And so my first question to them, well, what was COVID? Like, what is this? What does this mean? And like to the collective world. And so the answer that I kind of received, which I guess I, maybe should have started with this, but it's, COVID was, no matter, the suffering that happened, it's very, tragic, people that have passed on, but, or suffered from the disease. But what I kind of been receiving was that COVID is that reset period. So just like, in history, you've had like different types of viruses or flus or like the Industrial Revolution, like COVID was that kind of time to go inward as a collective all over the world. And it was like, people really either chose to kind of, numb themselves out, not feel their feelings, kind of really try to control the situation, or people like myself who had the time to process their old feelings, process what wasn't working, and kind of, choosing to follow their intuition and follow like, follow their guidance, I guess is a better word to put it, because we're always being guided, right? It just depends if you choose to go with it or not. And typically if you don't go with it, or if you choose not to, it's because of control. Control, man. I used to control my life all the time. And,
of course.
And I had plans, and I was like, if I weren't, if it was supper time and we weren't at supper at 5, it was just like, it was chaos, you know? And then it's just nowadays, it's like, that's just not, like, it's just not really a good flow of life if you're always trying to, control and be up against the world. And so that's really what COVID was, spiritually. Basically, what that means in the spiritual world is basically it's just a reset period for people to come out. And so for me, this really is my, if you would say, my public spiritually coming out of the closet.
Love it.
Right. It really is. I'm so ready, man. Like, I've been sharing with a lot of people, close friends, and I've been really making the effort to go out and in person and share it in person. And so now, if anybody of my people who listen to this, awesome. It's great. It's just, this is kind of my new life, and it's been wonderful. But I do want to point out though, it doesn't come without its challenges. And so what I mean by that is, people can say, oh, well, that's great for you and you can do this. And, but what about your family? What about your husband? And so I really want to touch upon, Tyler, my husband. He's just been really great. It's a lot for him. He's, again, with his kind of way of life, it's very different than what I've kind of been thrown into, I guess, or kind of growing into. And he's just, even though he doesn't really understand the whole picture, he's been very supportive. And, awesome. The decision for us to not be working right now wasn't taken lightly. Like, it's not that we have like all the money in the world and great, you can not work and be with your kids. Like, no, this is real life. Like, I am choosing, we are choosing this situation, or how should let me rephrase this. We are choosing to be in this transition so that we can better ourselves and our kids and our future. So it's definitely not, what I would call a stereotypical kind of spiritual awakening where like you go to Bali and you meditate, and it's really hard. Like, it's been really hard this year for us with, raising a newborn in a pandemic, and me kind of finding out I'm intuitive, and him kind of being like, oh my goodness, like you said, great, but how are we going to survive? How are we going to make money? Right. Yeah. And what I've been really learning to do is to just like trust and surrender and know that if I'm in flow in life and I'm, speaking my truth and writing, and that's a big portion too, is my writing. I will continue to do that. And I will be writing a couple of books as well. So look out for that. It's just, that's how abundance finds you. That's really the law of manifestation, is if you are true to yourself and you are doing what naturally comes to you, life comes to you. instead of fighting it and to control it. And so, you know, just for time's sake, I won't go into a lot of examples, but I've had loads of examples and tests and opportunities from the universe in the last year that really proved this point. And so I guess I'll kind of leave it at that. It's a lot of information that I know I kind of throw at you and the people listening, but it's really, like, to recap, you know, I grew up in a small town, you know, I'm 30 years old. I really, you know, didn't never would have thought that this would be the opportunity that I would walk into. And I'm so grateful. And I guess another note I want to end on is when I was in grade 12, I did a drama. Like, I was in drama for 4 years. And in the drama that we did, it was the Murder in the House of Horrors. And I chose the character of a crazy psychic lady. So, you know, just to like play a spoof on that, you know, and I'm like, thanks, universe. Like, you totally knew that I would own up to that. And I would really, not that I'm like a psychic or anything, but my soul called out. My soul called out when I was like even, you know, 18, 19, 20 years old. So, yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you know what, like, something that came up for me, you know, when you said the Bali portion, like, you know, that it wasn't a typical spiritual awakening. I think that a typical spiritual awakening is nothing like the Bali thing. I think that a typical spiritual awakening is exactly what you're doing, you know, because when I asked for my spiritual awakening, I got cancer. So, you know.
Oh my goodness.
Right. So the long and short of it, I think, is that a true awakening generally comes through some form of discomfort. So yeah, no, I think that's beautiful. So, okay. So I wanted to kind of just reiterate a few things that you had said that I thought were really pertinent, kind of the steps that you took. So when confronted with the endometriosis and all of those sorts of things, which kind of sounds like that was maybe the first kind of soiree into this transition, that you utilized things like that made you uncomfortable. So like womb healing and all of those sorts of things. It was new, it was different, it was scary. But you persevered and stood in your truth. You know, this felt right. So you kept doing it. I love that you said you utilized journals throughout kind of your process, and then that helped you to get out everything that you needed to get out, in a way that you could get out of your own brain, out of your own head, and just like have it flow onto the pages. And even you surprised yourself reading back in your journal entries like, oh my God, I wrote that. Something that you kept saying, which I thought was beautiful, is your gratitude for the discomfort. You know, like over and over again, you found gratitude for how it changed you and how it was making you better, even in the process, which I think was huge. Again, following your own authenticity. Let's see. So through your pain, you found compassion for the people who had hurt you in your life, forgiveness for them, forgiveness for yourself, and compassion for yourself. And lastly, you entered into your purpose courageously. You know, so the steps I'm hearing is kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you felt the discomfort, you persevered into self-exploration, you found gratitude for the discomfort, and finally, you forgave yourself, had compassion for yourself and for others, and continued to courageously be authentic. Am I right?
That is a wonderful recap. Yes. I wish I could have told it in that way.
No, you did it. You told it in an excellent way. Like, I'm the note taker here. So throughout this journey, which was multiple years, do you feel there was one thing that could potentially help somebody in a similar situation to help to go through in a way that might have a little bit more joy and ease? Or do you think that this process needed to happen authentically as it did?
I think it happened as it should have happened. However, I guess the big portion of what I would call my kind of catalyst of transformation would be to really, again, sit with your feelings. And so a prime example of this would be, throughout the years, I would have like triggers with my husband, but it wasn't him at all. It was about past relationships, past friends, what have you. And in that moment, because I became more aware, I realized it was never about the present situation. It was about what had happened in the past. You know how that is, right?
Yes.
And instead of, in previous years, I would excuse myself because I would feel like an emotional release coming on, or I would just, cry. I would have silently tears down my face, and I would go to the bedroom and cry. And my husband would be like, oh, what? But the moment I chose to not do that and chose to just sit there and have him, right? Because that you're being vulnerable, you're sitting there and your husband's like, what's going on with you? Why are you crying? Yes. And then that's when the shame comes in, where you're like, well, you have to you kind of have to explain why you're feeling what you're feeling and why. Or I guess you really have to explain. I mean, I felt the call to, so I did. But that's really what I would tell people is, if you ever have those emotional reactions where you are feeling grief, you are feeling shame, you are feeling anger, right? If you're having a fight with your spouse or your partner or whoever, and they're just not getting it, they are not understanding you. Sit there, feel it, and then kind of work through it. And I know that seems really vague, but that really is what kind of moved me through trying to hide everything, right? You're trying to put up this wall, but have an authentic relationship with your partner. Well, I mean, that doesn't work, right? It's you can't live a life.
Right.
So it's really being true to yourself and being vulnerable and being open. And I really love Brene Brown when she talks about being vulnerable, because that's really what it is. You are putting yourself out there. Everyone has baggage, everyone has stuff, and you bring into your next friendship, your next this, and you're going to be triggered by those things. But just learn to sit in the discomfort. And I know a lot of the great teachers, I can't think of his name now, Deepak Chopra, he talks about it. Sahara Rose talks about that. I know you talk about that a lot. So it's just, it's real. It's, that would be my one and only kind of just speed track you to the journey of healing. Yeah. Right. Don't run, feel.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So, how can people find you? I know that you haven't started your physical business yet, but you're wanting to move into books and to spiritual life coaching and those sorts of things. So for people to hear this and then want to connect with you, to follow along with your journey, how can they find you?
Right now, just my personal Facebook page. So just
perfect.
Tanys Kowalski. I do have Instagram. Honestly, I'm not really active on it. I mean, I started to share a little bit about my journey, but not a lot. Yeah, just personal Facebook for now, man. I mean, I can't wait to see what I'm going to create. So stay tuned.
To be continued. Yes, I love it. Very cool. So I'll link that. And then I'm also going to link Shift Intuit, because we've talked a lot about them.
Yes.
And they are an amazing counseling service, and they do Zoom calls, and they are global if they need to be. So yeah, an excellent way to get your standard counseling mixed in with your intuitive counseling, mediumship, and all of those sorts of things. So I'll make sure to link them as well. So I just want to thank you for all of your amazing, brave vulnerability and allowing people to listen into your story and learn something from it, because what it really comes down to is what is most vulnerable is most general. Maybe somebody listening to this is dealing with something similar, but it's maybe not intuition, but it's so similar and they can hear something in this. Or maybe it is intuition and they can hear something from this. But what it is that today you have helped somebody, and maybe multiple somebodies. So that is really beautiful, as well as helping yourself and opening up and, as you say, spiritually coming out of the closet. So everybody, now Tanys is intuitive. I love it. I think it's beautiful. And we all are in some way, shape, or form. So
thank you so much. I know I ramble. Well, I didn't really ramble, but it's kind of like my first kind of, go at sharing the story publicly. And so when I would share it with my close friends and family, it would be like the 2-minute version. Maybe the 5-minute version. I don't know how long we're recording, but this is definitely not the 5-minute version. So I really want everyone to really kind of listening through that. I just need to get it out. So
that's what this platform is for transformation, and transformation does not happen in 4 minutes. So you got it. Okay. So I'm going to end this portion of the call here, and then we can chat a little bit afterwards. But again, I just want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I am so excited to put this out there and to have people hear it and everything like that. So thanks again, Tanys.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine.
What an excellent transformational story. Thank you so much to Tanys for sharing and for gifting us with so many little tidbits of golden knowledge there, so many nuggets, and for being so vulnerable and showing us that you truly can be authentic to yourself. You truly can allow who you are to fill you up and to mirror that in your life, and how it can beautifully benefit you when you decide to make the decision to allow the real you to come through. So thanks again, Tanys, and I hope that you found this episode interesting and educational, and I hope that you go out today and live free. Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. If you found expansion with this last episode, then that means that others will too. And the best way to get the word out about the podcast is by leaving a review. I would be so grateful if you could leave me a review and let me know how you felt about the podcast. Included in the show notes will be everything that we talked about today, including all of my transformative programs. Change is just on the horizon, my friend.